So, before we start, try to generate the correct motivation. Sangye chedam sangye tsanam janja bada dani yazaji Tage jinso gebe sonangye dola benje sangye zoba jo sangye chedam son janja bada dani yazaji Tage jinso gebe sonangye dola benje sangye doba jo sangye chedam son janja bada dani yazaji Tage jinso gebe sonangye Dola Penche Sangye Doba So, welcome again. So we continue from yesterday. Yeah, so you missed me in the first part.
Sorry.
No problem. So yesterday we didn't do much though. We went over the homage, the homage of the Guru being the end, that's what we covered yesterday. No, first step is in our spiritual path is dependence on the virtuous friend, the Guru or the teacher, being the fundamental kind of object for all the realizations to come about. As we saw. Then it went over the promise to compose. The Lama Tsongkhapa composed this text for the benefit of all sentient beings, and we saw in those 4 lines, basically summarizing the 3 aspects of the path. The first line referring to renunciation, the second line to Bodhichitta, and the third line to the correct view. So that are the 3 principal aspects of the path. So why principal aspects? Because by depending on these 3 trainings or these 3 aspects, we can achieve enlightenment. Depending on the first one and the last one, we can achieve liberation. But in order to achieve enlightenment, we need all those 3. We need renunciation, as we saw yesterday. In order to understand the suffering of all sentient beings, we have to understand our own suffering. So that's why we have to meditate on renunciation. So some people say Hinayana, Mahayana, but there's no Mahayana without Hinayana, for example, right? So in that context, we have to practice all those trainings as well. So that's those 3 lines referring to the 3 principal aspects of the path. And then of course I shall explain as much as I can. Lama Tsongkhapa, very humble, made that kind of statement. Though he is fully qualified. But then the way to listen, we saw important. To listen with a clear mind, having interest in these kind of things. And and we talked about the different kind of vessels. If you fall asleep, then you don't absorb anything. If you get distracted, you also can't follow anything. So there's all kind of things related with how to listen. Also sometimes it talks about different kind of discriminating factors. See yourself as a sick person, because we have sickness of the afflictions, right? So we need a kind of medicine, and we need to kind of depend on a doctor, and we need to depend on nurses. So in that way, the Buddha is the doctor. The teachings is the medicine, and then the nurses can be related with the Sangha community. So, and then to taking this aspect of this teaching into the path is then actually the curing process. So we went yesterday also over, you know and understand suffering. Without knowing or understanding suffering, you will never generate a wish to be free of it. So that's why we have to understand the difficulty of problems in order to get rid of it. That also we saw. Then every aspect of the Four Noble Truths, of these kind of 3 aspects. First, it talks about the purpose. Why do we have to meditate on this? That's always very important, to know why do I meditate, how do I meditate, and how do I know I meditate correctly. So yesterday we talked about death and impermanence, for example. So why do we meditate on death and impermanence? To know we have a very precious opportunity, and the opportunity is not going to last forever. So to motivate ourselves to start acting in the practice. So that's why we meditate on impermanence and death, not to make us depressed or whatsoever, but that's the need, or to understand reality. Also yesterday we talked about, if you don't meditate on death and impermanence, then you grasp to permanence, and you might meet reality one day, that a family member or a friend, passes away, and then it's very difficult, the acceptance. So that's why we have to know why we meditate on a particular point. Why do we do this? Why do we do that? And how do we do it? And also how to see if we have generated that mindset correctly. If death and impermanence only makes you depressed, if you meditate, then you haven't done it correctly. If it motivates you to engage in more understanding of reality and practice, then you have created the right result of that meditation. So that's always very important. If you meditate on the Lamrim, every section you go on your spiritual path to enlightenment, you always have to know these points. Why do I meditate on this point? How do I do it? And how do I know I did it correctly? Those 3 points are very important. Because many people, they just don't know, and they misunderstand, or they don't get the right instruction. They meditate and there's no benefit, and then just put it aside. That's why I said yesterday also, especially if you're new to these kind of things, examine well if it's really of benefit or not. And then accept it, and then engage in the practice as such. So then, by understanding, we have incredible opportunity as a presumed rebirth. We have incredible potential to say, and we saw yesterday also a mosquito, has the potential to become a Buddha. Why? Because the mosquito also has consciousness. Every living being that has consciousness has a potential. Maybe not in that particular lifetime, but after lifetimes. Why is it? What is that potential? That potential is the lack of concreteness. The mind, by itself, is in the nature of dependent origination. There's no concrete consciousness as such, like that we say, this is consciousness. Yesterday also we talked about we cannot find a beginning of consciousness. So there's a momentary and changing nature of a continuity of different moments, right? So that's that mere collection of those moments we call the stream of consciousness. So we talked about it yesterday also. And then to see that we have this potential, because this mind is empty of inherent existence, meaning the mind is momentarily changing. There's no concrete mind as such. And on top of that, we also saw that the afflictions are not an innate part of the mind. The afflictions, they come up, they abide and disintegrate like the clouds in the sky. So that also means that those afflictions can be eliminated. There's blue sky still behind the clouds. So our mind, same thing. By nature, our mind is clear knowing. That's one interpretation. Or other interpretations is our mind has the clear light nature of the mind, or luminous. So the afflictions are not an innate part of the mind. So the mind by itself is pure. So this purity, and especially the ultimate nature of the purity of the lack of that concreteness, that from our mind and the mind of the Buddha, exactly the same. So in that way, we can achieve. We can eliminate those faults. We can eliminate afflictions. Like anger, attachment, jealousy, pride. So that's possible by having found this opportunity we have right now. We have a mind, we can analyze. So in that way, we're very fortunate. That we talked about in verse number 4. And then also we saw that this opportunity is not going to last forever. So that also is going to end. The moment we're born, we know we're going to die. So better put it into practice. Use it. So that's where we left yesterday. So then we talked about past and future lifetimes. If they exist or not, I leave it up to you to decide and discuss, to analyze. So, but from a Buddhist perspective, we say consciousness can only be produced by consciousness itself. So there's no beginning to be found of the stream of consciousness. Because if we say, okay, the moment of consciousness today, or this morning, I had the previous moment of just by waking up, or just the mental consciousness before waking up. So consciousness actually never stops, as we saw. Even during sleep, there's still conscious activity, right? Mental consciousness mainly then. So from that point of view, there's no beginning. So since beginner's lifetime, we have this continuous stream of consciousness. So then, if we're gonna die, so for people who familiarized with these kind of aspects of the path, then dying is just changing the guest house. If you go traveling, you go from one guest house to the other. So same for if you get familiar with these things, and the practitioners, the people who put it really into practice, you're not like me, but the real practitioners, that is not a big deal. It's just changing the body, and we did that already since beginner's lifetime. So one more is not that much of a big deal for those kind of realized beings. Yeah. So then, if we take rebirth, then what happens? We can go to lower states of rebirth or higher states of rebirth, or get again a precious human rebirth, as we have right now. So we focus upon this aspect of try to get a good human rebirth. Yeah, so we have the great courses for that. What are the courses for a good rebirth? Do you remember? Precious human rebirth, like we have now. Moral conduct, yeah.
Generosity.
Yeah, generosity and all the other perfections, yeah. And prayer, yeah. You need kind of a dedication or motivation. Why do this moral conduct? So morality, yeah. Morality is based with this. Morality is needed on every level. Yeah. Morality is needed for happiness in this life. Morality is needed for the happiness of future lifetimes. Morality is needed for nirvana, yeah, liberation. And morality is also needed for enlightenment. Yeah, even in this life, it's true. If you don't obey the law and order, then problems arise, right? So we need a kind of conduct. Without law and order, then things become a mess. Yeah? That's even more true for our own mind. Yeah? We need a kind of morality. We need to know what causes suffering and what causes happiness. And according to that, we have particular rules. Yeah? So that's the morality for example, the monks and nuns. There's a morality for the lay people. Yeah? You can take 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 vows for a lay person. Yeah? So that's the basis of our practice, so to say. Yeah? Without morality, then it's very difficult. Yeah? The Buddha, when he was passing away, then the students asked the Buddha, what do we do without our teacher? So then the Buddha said, after my passing, the real teaching is morality. Yeah? If there's a group, for example, central country, where there's fully ordained monks and nuns, as well as lay people living in the vows of the Patimokkha, the individual liberation vows, then that place basically holds the teaching that we considered as a central land. Yeah? So that's why the Buddha gave a very clear indication that the existence of the Buddha Dharma is not temples or beautiful statues or whatsoever. It's people who practice morality, in this kind of. So that's been set out very clearly. So that's the course for good rebirth, for liberation and enlightenment. Yeah? All those 3 points of the path. You need this kind of morality. Yeah? Because why? Because you have to create good karma. Yeah? You have to not engage in negative deeds, which can throw you in lower states of rebirth. Yeah? So that's very logical. Yeah? So then on this point, if you study the Lamrim, then you can think about the contemplation about the suffering of the lower realms, and not having a wish not to be born there, and then take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha. Then what is the advice of refuge? Is the law of karma and the law of cause and effect, or karma. So then we should know what are negative deeds like killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, etc. So we prevent those 10 non-virtues of body, speech, and mind. So we all know there's 3 of the speech, 3 of the body, 4 of the speech, and 3 of the mind, right? So we prevent those 10 non-virtues. Then we get a good rebirth. Okay. So that says here in this particular second part of verse number 4. By thinking over and over again that actions and their effect are unbetraying. So by focusing upon karma, we know actually how to act. It's in Tibetan there's a saying, Tendeltik means organizing dependent origination. Dependent origination is there, right? The law of cause and effect exists. That's reality. So if you understand that reality, you can act accordingly and create causes for happiness, right? If you know the mind, what creates suffering and what creates happiness, and accordingly you create the right causes. As we saw yesterday, most people in this world, they don't really know how to create causes for happiness, or how to create or prevent causes for suffering. So luckily we have to a certain extent knowledge about these things, to avoid those destructive emotions and the actions motivated by destructive emotions. So anger, attachment, jealousy, pride. Yeah, they also cause negative actions of our verbal activity as well as our physical activity. Right? Every activity we do, everything we say, the way we act depends on the mental intention. Yeah. So if that mental intention is a destructive emotion, then the outcome of our verbal and physical activity will also be negative, right? Yeah, shouting at a person out of anger, yeah, or attached to a particular person or a particular object, and really wanting that object, maybe stealing or getting angry when somebody else takes that object away, or so in that way also attachment, anger, jealousy, same thing, pride, same thing, yeah. If that motivates our physical and verbal behavior, the outcome is negative, right? Yeah, so that we have to understand, and if you train your mind, then also your physical and verbal activity becomes positive. Yeah, yeah. So we try to think in that way. Yeah. So that's the advice of karma. Then, and repeatedly contemplating the miseries of cyclic existence, actions and appearance of future lifetime is reversed. Yeah. So this means if you first meditate on presume rebirth and death and impermanence. Yeah, you generate interest in future lifetimes. Yeah, so the future life, even as a human being, is not perfect, or is it? What do you think? Human being is perfect life, or not really? No. So because as a human being, we still have suffering, right? Though we have a very good kind of situation because we don't have too much suffering, and we don't have too much happiness. Yeah, because if you have too much happiness, then to enter a spiritual path is also difficult. If you have too much suffering, it's also difficult. Remember when you're really sick, yeah, you only think about getting better. There's no virtuous thought coming to mind, So that's why, as a human being, we actually have the perfect conditions to meditate on suffering. Yeah, we sometimes experience, and it's not too much that we can't put things into practice. So we're very fortunate. But still, as we see, human existence is not perfect. So everything within the cycle of rebirth, yeah, if it's humans, if it's animals, if it's the God realms, yeah, there's no ultimate satisfaction to be found. Yeah. So then on this stage, yeah, here, how to generate renunciation, we have to generate a understanding of suffering, yeah, and a wish to be free of it, right? If you never have a wish to be free of suffering, you will never strive for nirvana. No? So for that purpose, first you have to understand suffering. Yeah, so that's also a reason why we meditate on suffering. Yeah, not to make us unhappy or to get depressed, but to understand that it's we need to be free of it. Yeah? Generate a kind of fear for that particular suffering or dislike. Yeah? So how do we do that? There's all kinds of suffering. Yeah, you can have a threefold suffering of change, and all pervasive compounded form of suffering. Yeah? So suffering of suffering is easy, right? Even animals, they understand the suffering of suffering. When the sun is too hot, now Delhi is getting hotter, so then they go into the shade, right? Yeah. So for us same human beings, we get an AC and try to have more comfort. Yeah. So escape of suffering. Yeah. Same for animals. Even the gods, they understand this aspect. Many beings, they understand the suffering of suffering. Yeah. You don't need much education for that. Yeah? Then the suffering of change is more difficult to recognize. Yeah. So what is the suffering of change? Basically, every contaminated form of happiness, yeah, is suffering of change. Yeah? Yesterday we talked about a little bit that all those contaminated forms of happiness in this life doesn't really bring ultimate happiness or stable happiness. Yeah? If it's food, if it's drugs, whatever you use, there's no stable form of happiness to be found in those external kind of things, right? So a nice Punjabi dinner or something we look forward to, and it's like you have a certain kind of attachment. Think, oh, I've had this Punjabi dinner, this and this and this, and so happy, But then you eat too much, and then the mind is dull, and next morning you wake up, and it's like, you had too heavy dinner, yeah. So that's the change, right? The suffering of change. Yeah? So it looks like it's a cause for happiness, but actually it's a cause for suffering. Yeah, on the long term. Yeah. Yeah. So and there's no satisfaction. The more you eat, you don't get more happy, right? So all those kind of ordinary things in life, Yeah, of course we need and we can enjoy it, but don't get attached to the idea that this will bring you real happiness, because that's not the case. Yeah, then only you get dissatisfaction. So that's not the case. The real happiness, this is what yesterday comes from, developing the mind. Yeah, because mental happiness is much more important than the physical one. Yeah, our mental development is so much more important. Yeah, if you're sick, for example, it's much easier to deal with a physical difficulty than it is to deal with a mental difficulty, right? Yeah. So if you have some peace of mind, yeah, or just a mere happiness of having a nice meal, that peace of mind is gives much more satisfaction, right? Yeah. So if you have peace of mind, then there's more happiness being gained. There's a mental state of happiness. Yeah. So we have to train for that. So that's the suffering of suffering, and the suffering of change. Yeah. So then the last one, the third one, the all-pervasive compounded form of suffering. Yeah, it's very difficult to understand in general, but when the Buddha said in the Four Noble Truths, as we saw yesterday, you should know suffering. You should abandon the cause of suffering. Yeah, you should manifest the sensations or the absence of suffering, and you should meditate on the paths. Yeah, the Four Noble Truths the Buddha explained in those with those kind of quotations. So you should know suffering. Buddha was referring not to the suffering of suffering, not to the suffering of change, but to this last one, all-pervasive compounded form of suffering. So all-pervasive means wherever you are in cyclic existence, it pervades everywhere. Yeah, and also pervades everywhere in our contaminated aggregates. You know, so and compounded is an aspect of being impermanent. Yeah, so momentary changing nature. Yeah, so wherever we go, wherever we are, yeah, every moment this is present. Yeah, so our body now, we're quite comfortable, right? Then if you sit a bit longer, then maybe your legs start to hurt, or your back, or whatsoever. You know, it's like, and then you sit another way, then again start hurting, or you're tired of sitting, then you're standing up, and then standing up becomes difficult. So this all-pervasive form of suffering, wherever we have these contaminated aggregates, they are present. Yeah, yeah. So the cause of this contaminated form of happiness, this contaminated form of suffering, yeah, the all-pervasive compounded form of suffering, the cause for that is ignorance. As we saw yesterday, when you get angry or attachment, jealousy, pride, whatever destructive emotion arises, initially there's a very concrete appearance of I. You know, when we get angry at a person, how dare this person say this to me? I'm important, you know, that kind of very concrete concept of a concrete self, a concrete I, you know, we make it very concrete. So this I, basically, the question is, does it exist the way it appears? You know, because yesterday we saw whatever appears to our mind is not always reality. You know, the example of the train, yeah, look who's moving, it looks like you moving, but you look at the platform and it's the other train, right? So that whatever appears to our mind is not always reality. Yeah, on TV you see all those magical shows or whatsoever, and you know it's fake more or less, but almost you believe it. Yeah, so in that way, whatever appears is not always reality. So this concrete sense of I, based on that self-centered attitude arises. Based on that, we generate anger, attachment, jealousy, pride. Based on that, we engage in physical and verbal behavior. Yeah, which the outcome is mostly negative because the destructive emotion is motivating that act. Yeah, so that's why this is the real cause for all our problems. Is this ignorance, not knowing the real nature of ourself, not knowing the real nature of our body and mind. Yeah, so we think it appears as very concrete, but actually, if you analyze, as we see later, that it cannot exist the way it appears. Yeah. So that's, for the time being, 3 types of suffering. Yeah. Then you can also think about all the types of suffering, right? Suffering of birth, sickness, aging, death. Yeah, it's very easy to relate to. Yeah, a baby born, mostly they cry. Yeah, they don't laugh and jump around happily and say, "Oh, I'm here." You know, it's like mostly it's a different kind of. It's very tough. You know, coming all the way from the dark. You know, from the womb and all the way in the light, and then the soft thing inside is like, you know, all liquids, and you come out and the towel is like sandpaper, you know, probably for a skin of a baby, newborn baby, you know. So there's a lot of suffering there, and then all the hassles we know, from all the hassles from going to school, all the problems we had on school, and then choosing what to do in the future, and going to college, university, and and then finished, and then you have to work, or what kind of work you want to do, and then you don't find a real job you like to, or the other way around, So there's all this kind of, that nothing is perfect in our life, right? So that's suffering of birth, sickness, also, When we get sick, it's beyond our control. We don't like to become sick, right? But by the power of karma and afflictions, if particular causes and conditions are present, we get sick. Yeah. So there's different types of sicknesses. Yeah. Some are temporary, some are more difficult to deal with, more not to be cured. So those things happen, right? One day also will happen to us. One day we will get a sickness we cannot be cured and we die. Yeah. So that is beyond our control, isn't it? If it was in our control, we would prevent it, but that's not the case. Yeah? So we can think about the suffering of, birth, sickness, aging, death, also death. Some people, if you never think about death and impermanence, can be quite scary, But from the other point of view, if you think about beginner's lifetime, you have died so many times, so it's like one more time is, but the thing that causes us fear and sadness is that grasping at that concrete, body. Yeah, which actually is just like a guest house, and the consciousness just moves forward. Yeah. So some of the lamas, when they die and when they get old, they're happy that they're dying, because there for them it's like, okay, this body is now too old, I can't function properly anymore, I can't benefit beings anymore. If I get a new fresh body, then it's much better. So it's a totally different concept than an average person who thinks, oh, I want to, don't. Even at the time of death, they still don't want to die, or they don't think they're dying. Yeah. So that's just those sufferings of, and then you also have the suffering of, meeting things you dislike, never meeting things you like, and never being satisfied. Yeah, that's one of the main things in samsara. Whatever, if you're born, you become very wealthy or very famous or whatsoever, there's no satisfaction. Whatever thing you use in external things, there's no satisfaction if you don't know how to train the mind. Wherever you go, there's so many people who travel the world. Then they go to one place and they get bored, so go to another place, get bored, and a new place. Oh wow, a new place, and then get bored, and then after a year traveling around the globe, basically they didn't find what they were looking for. There's no real happiness to be found in those external matters. Yeah, so you can imagine, those things quite easy to relate to for us. A little bit of understanding of, the things in the world we know that is not giving us the real happiness. Yeah. So you contemplate about those things, and so then the Buddha said you should know suffering. Yeah. So you should know this suffering, and then you should know the cause of suffering. Yeah. So we saw the cause of all these problems is this kind of ignorance, and based on this ignorance of grasping at this concrete I am me, afflictions, anger, attachment, jealousy, pride arise. Based on that, we already have disturbance of the mind. On top of that, we might create negative karma with body and speech. Yeah, and then the circle goes around and around and around and around. Yeah, so that's what is here being referred to, and repeatedly contemplating the miseries of cyclic existence. Yeah, or samsara. Yeah. So as long as you have this ignorance, destructive emotions arise. As long as you have these destructive emotions, you disturb the mind and you create all kind of negative karma. So the real causes for suffering, is those destructive emotions or afflictions and karma. So that has to be eliminated. So the more you think about things, then you think, I have to get rid of this. I have to get rid of these kind of contaminated states. Yeah. So that if you generate that by contemplating these kinds of suffering, then you actually come to the next point, verse number 5, the definition of having generated renunciation. Yeah? So it says, when by having trained in that way, we just explained, we just talked about, there is no arising even for a second of the attractions to the perfections of cyclic existence. Yeah? You see that everything within contaminated samsara is not a cause for happiness, but actually a cause for suffering. So if you have generated that wish day and night, then, and intention to be free of it, and achieve nirvana, or liberation, then the thought of renunciation has been generated. So day and night means just a little bit here and there, or it's effortless, no? So for us, very difficult, no? One time we think about suffering of samsara, and then the other day we go to a nice restaurant and enjoy ourselves and don't realize actually these matters, So you can still enjoy, but the clue is don't get attached and don't think that this is going to bring you real happiness, right? So what he means day and night, if you contemplated what we just talked about, the types of suffering and how suffering is caused, etc., back and forth, over a long period of time, then one day that wish to be free of suffering becomes spontaneous, right? By the power of habituation. And yesterday we also saw that, anger, though we cannot eliminate directly, but by the power of habituation to seeing the faults of anger and the benefits of patience, we can slowly transform the mind. So the example I give of a friend of mine in the Netherlands, in the traffic jam, who were able to practicing patience after a few years of training, that's possible. It's possible to train the mind. So the more you habituate yourself to these positive states of mind, the easier it is for them to come about, right? So for us, for negative mind, the same thing, Because of the habituation, it's for us very easy to generate afflictions or destructive emotions, right? If I ask you to practice patience under certain circumstances, it might be quite difficult for you. You have to put a lot of effort, But if I ask you to get angry at a person you dislike, within a few seconds probably you can generate anger, So that's by the power of habituation. But we can reverse that process and habituate ourselves to positive states of mind, and then make it like almost that it becomes spontaneous. So that's what he means by all day and night. So technically speaking, in the text it says uncontrived. Contrived is kind of an artificial way of generating it again and again and again with effort. Uncontrived is like the realization is present day and night. You motivate it with this intention. So if you have generated this wish for liberation, in this way, when it's spontaneous, whatever you do in your life, everything will be a cause for liberation, because that motivation is always present, So if we have a motivation to become a doctor, or a motivation to finish a particular education, and that motivation is very strong, everything we do actually goes in that direction, right? So that's here true for our spiritual part as well. If you really have this spontaneous wish to be free of samsara, and that's present day and night, even in your dreams, then whatever you do becomes a cause for liberation. So you don't have to worry anymore. So that's why to generate this is very important. If you really want to have stable happiness, then you have to understand the contaminated forms of, the contaminated happiness of samsara doesn't really bring you the real happiness you're looking for. Yes, that be clear? So that's the first principal aspect of the path, renunciation. So if you want to become a Buddha first, because this text is based on that kind of motivation, first you have to understand samsara and the suffering of samsara. You have to have a wish to be free of samsara. And you have to generate this renunciation. So that's the first principal aspect of the path. So then next, the mind of enlightenment. So then, seeing that oneself is just one, and all beings around you are much more in number, and they all have the same wish, wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. And through the power of their ignorance, they cycling around in samsara again and again. So we now understanding these points, then we generate a kind of wish to help them. So that is being in the next few verses been explained. So first is the purpose. Why do I have to meditate on the mind of enlightenment or bodhicitta? Why do I have to meditate on that? Or what is the purpose of it? That's explained in verse number 6. So there also says, even if renunciation has been developed, if even to a certain extent been developed, it is not possessed by the mind of enlightenment. It does not become a cause for perfect bliss of unsurpassed enlightenment of Buddhahood. Therefore, the wise generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. So, if you don't want to become a Buddha, if you just want to become an Arhat, yeah, or liberated from themselves, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, that's the Buddha's teaching. That's no problem. But if you think about you just one person and others are so much more in number, and they have the same wish. Our innate wish of happiness and not wanting suffering is very strong. Especially when we have a little bit of suffering, isn't it? So that wish exists in all of us. All beings around us have exactly the same wish, the same strength. So then thinking about to work for the benefit of 2 or 3, accomplishments of those wishes is more supreme than just one. So based on that kind of logic, it's much more meaningful to work for the benefit of all sentient beings. Yeah? So there's this different kinds of generation of bodhicitta, like a king or like a boatsman or like a shepherd. A shepherd is first all sentient beings, enlightenment, and then oneself. Yeah? So that's a generation of enlightenment, like Avalokitesvara had that kind of wish. So then the next one is the boatsman. Yeah, you go on a boat to the shore, you reach at the same time. Yeah, so you think, may I and all sentient beings achieve enlightenment, at the same time, yeah, or lead them, and then we all achieve enlightenment. Yeah. So that's Manjushri, the Bodhisattva Manjushri at the time where the Buddha generated that wish. And then as a king, if you are a king, or in the early times there were no presidents, right? So you had kings. So if you're a very influential person in a particular area, you can do much more for society. So that's why if you first become a Buddha, and then you can really lead all sentient beings to enlightenment. Yeah, it's very profound method. So that's more that Sakyamuni Buddha had generated this kind of wish. Though the other ones also, for the generation of the mind, very powerful. Yeah, if you only first think about others, and then yourself, from the point of view of generation of this kind of supreme intention, is very powerful. Yeah, yeah. So that's actually the need or the purpose of generating the body mind, yeah, because others are more in number, yeah, and they're so kind, because thanks to sentient beings we can accumulate qualities, right? If there's no sentient beings, if there's no person, who dislikes you, how do you practice patience? You cannot just sit in your room and close yourself up from the whole entire world, and practicing patience is very difficult, So that's why the people are so kind to give us opportunity to practice patience. Yesterday I mentioned the story of Atisha, who didn't want to give away his attendant, who was always, behaving in a very difficult way, but Atisha kept him to practice patience, So in that way, sentient beings are so kind. Yeah? So there's patience, there's generosity, Without beings, we cannot practice generosity. So first generosity, then morality, yeah, because everything we do, verbal or physical acts, is always in relation to others. So without sentient beings, we cannot really practice morality, So, and then, of course, patience, yeah, effort, same thing, and all those perfections, all the different kind of practices we do, depends on the kinds of sentient beings. Yeah? So in that way, we should do something in return for those beings who also have the same wish, not wanting suffering and wanting happiness. So how wonderful it would be if we can really be of benefit for others to achieve these goals of ultimate happiness. So that's things to think about. Yeah, that aspiration. Yeah, so that's kind of, if you have that kind of aspiration, then you know the need or the purpose of generating this awakening mind. Yeah. So that's verse number 6. Yeah. So then how do we generate? Yeah. So first we know we have to generate, then how do we do it? So then again, we have to basically first become very close to sentient beings. The closer we become, the more relationship is built, and the more easier it will be to generate that wish, may they be free of suffering, or may they always abide in happiness, right? Yeah? For a stranger and person we dislike, very difficult, Yeah? So that's why first we have to generate a kind of equanimity, see all beings as equal. Yeah? Otherwise it's like, I want to become a Buddha for the benefit of all beings, except this one, a person you dislike. Yeah? So in that purpose you have to you have to have this kind of equanimity, yeah, equal to all sentient beings. If it's a person you like, if it's a person you don't know, you have a kind of indifferent feeling towards too, or if it's a person you dislike, yeah. So that's why we have to basically equalize those three, yeah. So how do we do that? You know, if you imagine those three persons, yeah, what is our dearest friend? Yeah, is from our side we look at a person we like, yeah, but another person might dislike that person, right? Isn't it? But the person is the same. It's just how we see that person, how somebody else sees that person. That makes a difference. But actually the person is the same. The same with a person we meet on the street we don't know, you know, a person we don't have a relationship with, we feel kind of indifferent to, yeah, yeah. So that person we met on the street, we don't really care much about, but it can be the dearest friend of somebody and can be the worst enemy of somebody else. But the person is exactly the same. It's just how three individuals look at that person makes a differentiation. You know? So it's the same true for our person we dislike. You know, person we dislike, because of certain reason, somebody else might like that person. Isn't it true, no? And even during time, the person we dislike at a particular period, when we solve the problem, then we start to like the person and we become very close, right? So the person remains the same, but it's just our, you know, our projection that make a differentiation. So that's also there you see that based on afflictions, yeah, attachment to those we like, aversion to those we dislike, yeah, indifference to those we don't like, we don't know, you know. So based on those attitudes, we make a differentiation, but the persons are the same, you know. So in that way, we try to equalize all beings as equal, as the same, you know. Based on that, then we think about the kindness of all those beings, and then wish to repay the kindness. So the kindness we just talked about, yeah, whatever practice we do, it depends on the kindness of beings. Yeah? Even in life, you know, everything we need to support our life depends on multi kind of, you know, amounts of human beings who help us in different ways, and you know. So in that way, people around us, we interdependent, right? We depend so much on others. So then, after having generated this equanimity, yeah, we see the kindness of all beings. Then a wish to repay their kindness, yeah, comes around the corner, and then we getting close to that person, right? If you have this kind of mindset being generated, where you come close because you like to repay this kindness, you want to help this person, yeah. So then we think how wonderful it would be if this person may they always abide in happiness, right? That's the first step. Then the next step is how wonderful it would be if they're free of suffering, you know? Yeah, may they be free of suffering. So that's what we call compassion, yeah. And then if you focus upon all sentient beings without exception, then it becomes great compassion, yeah. So then next step is, can I do that? Can I establish the happiness of all sentient beings? Can I liberate all sentient beings from their suffering? Yeah, as we saw yesterday, then we look at our own capacity, and we quite, we lacking different qualities. Yeah, like if you look at a enlightened being like His Holiness Dalai Lama, for example, you can see what a person like that can do for society, and what helping individuals, helping different groups. Then the capacity of mind is much more developed. Yeah, so we also have to develop this kind of mind. Yeah, we have to become a Buddha to be a real benefit. Yeah, on a temporary level, we try to help others the best way we can, but our aim is to become more developed. The same as a doctor, the more study, the more experience a doctor has, the more he can be of benefit for others, right? So in a similar way, now we not only talk about a sickness, curing a sickness, but we're talking about curing the sickness of the afflictions, yeah, which might take lifetimes. Yeah, so for that purpose, we have to have a higher developed kind of state of mind to be in control and to help sentient beings in a very sophisticated professional way. Yeah, so that's why we have to achieve enlightenment for that particular purpose. Yeah, so that is kind of what we call special intention. Yeah, so I have to achieve enlightenment for that particular purpose, and based on that, we generate what is called Bodhichitta, or the mind of enlightenment. Yeah, so yesterday I briefly mentioned that the mind of enlightenment has two aspirations. Yeah, one is the wish for all sentient beings to be free of suffering. Yeah, And the other one, for that purpose, I needed this development of Buddhahood. So I aspire to become Buddha in order to liberate sentient beings from their suffering. Yeah? So that's actually how to generate the mind of enlightenment. Yeah? So here, in this being also explained in the booklet in those 2 verses, 7 and 8. So here it says, swept away by the current of the 4 powerful rivers. Yeah? Tied by the tight bounds of karma, so hard to undo, caught in the iron net of self-grasping, completely enveloped by the total darkness of ignorance. Yeah? So the reference to samsaric suffering in general, but all modern sentient beings have, experiencing that. Yeah? So it says here, swept away by the current of the 4 powerful rivers. So there's different explanations possible, but maybe we keep it simple as we just explained. There's the 4 sufferings of birth, sickness, aging, and death. Yeah. So those 4 types of suffering you can apply to those 4 powerful rivers. Yeah. So can you imagine if you fall in a river, with a very strong current, you're a bit hopeless, right? I remember yesterday I told the story before I was hitchhiking in Europe. Remember the story? So once we hitchhiked to Spain. From Holland to Spain. Hitchhiking was very easy in that way, in Europe. And I think we only spent 5 guildens reaching the Spanish border, which is like 5 guildens is maybe €3, So anyway, so we reached that border and then we went, we thought we'd go to the coast, and we had a camping place, and then we thought we'd go for a swim, for a swim. And then we went to the beach there. That was before I became a Buddhist, I was just like ignorant about all kind of. So I thought holiday brings happiness, So we went, and then went there to the beach, and nobody's swimming here. Let's swim, It's like nobody's there, so we have all the space, But actually, it was very dangerous. We didn't know, because we didn't know Spanish. So we went there, and then the current in the beginning it was like there, and then all of a sudden, the current just swept you just takes your legs away, Some current's very strong, and then all of a sudden I didn't know what was up or down anymore. So then luckily I didn't die, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But luckily I came up, and there was a wave. I could just climb on the wave and go back to the coast. But it was very scary, So if you in that situation you cannot do anything, right? You just swept away by the current. Yeah? So that's the current of those 4 types of suffering. Yeah, samsara is like that, no? It's like we always have this kind of suffering, birth, sickness, aging, and death without control, Yeah. Tied by the right bound of karma. Yeah. So because of karma and afflictions, we create this cause for suffering, as we just talked about. Yeah. So you can imagine you in that kind of powerful river, but then you cannot use your arms like I went on top of the wave. Then also you're tied, by karma and afflictions, like maybe like this, or what is it called? How do you call the jacket? Straight jacket, Like, can you imagine being in a straight jacket in those currents? Then it's hopeless, no? Yeah. So hard to undo. Caught in the iron net of self-grasping. Yeah, I just said ignorance. Yeah, ignorance is this root cause for the afflictions to arise. Yeah, this concrete concept of I. Yeah, based on this concrete concept of I, we say I, me, I am important. How dare this person say this to me? Make it very concrete, the I. Yeah? So based on this self-grasping, all problems arise. Yeah? So that's why it's here. So you're not only in this current, but also in the straitjacket, but on top of that you're also in an iron kind of cage. You cannot escape. So it's very, very tiring. And then on top of that is dark. So that's actually an example how samsara is. Yeah. So to the darkness of ignorance, by not knowing reality, not knowing of this self-grasping, state of mind is in accordance with reality or not. Yeah. We know whatever appears to our mind is not always reality. Yeah. So we think that this concrete I is reality out of ignorance because we don't know reality, right? So based on that, sentient beings are caught in samsara. Yeah, if you look from a distance, if you contemplate these things, and it makes a lot of sense. People who don't know, they just create those causes again and again and again for suffering. Endlessly reborn in cyclic existence. Seasonally tormented by the three types of suffering we just talked about. The suffering, the suffering of change, and the all-pervasive compounded form of suffering. So the suffering of suffering we saw is like a sickness. The suffering of change is like the Punjabi dinner. We think we expect a lot, but actually it turns into suffering. It's not the real. You from Punjab? No.
Yes.
No. I normally when I teach in Bangalore, we always send in Bangalore, and we always like Punjabi like dinners. So sometimes it's a bit heavy, So then, you eat a lot. Then next morning you wake up and the mind is like, a bit dull. So that's the suffering of change. And then on top of that, we also talked about all pervasive compounded form of suffering that pervades everywhere. And on top of that, as long as this ignorance is present, we constantly create those problems. So that's why it's all pervasive. So that's the three types of suffering. Thinking that all mothers are in such a condition. All mothers, meaning all sentient beings. We just talked about how to generate this state of mind by first thinking about a kindness, right? Or first we did equanimity. We equalized all people we like, we dislike, and strangers, by seeing that as just our temporary, imputation or temporary conception that labels this person I like, this person I dislike, this person I don't care because I don't know the person. But those three persons are exactly the same. They have their own friends, they have their own enemies, but the person remains the same. It's just how people look at those individuals, right? The three are exactly the same. From their side, just human beings wanting happiness, nothing else. And due to the power of afflictions, they make mistakes. So that's why a person who gets angry at us, it's not the person who is totally wrong, it's the affliction in his mind. That's the real enemy, the affliction, anger. Because that person is also overpowered, beyond control. So same as a person is drunk. When a person is drunk and says something nasty to you, you say, doesn't matter, he's drunk, right? Isn't it? But actually a person who is drunk of the affliction, same thing. He's beyond control, he doesn't know what to do, so he's not in control, so he says stupid things because out of anger, So that's, in one way, it's very similar, So in that way you can see that also as, even a person who says something nasty is just not a human being wanting happiness, because deep inside, the person who treats you badly, deep inside, that person doesn't want disturbance of mind. The person wants happiness. Same thing. So here, mothers. So technically speaking, traditional. If you believe in reincarnation, then it makes much more sense. If you don't believe in reincarnation, then this mother aspect you can leave out, but you can think about the kindness of sentient beings. So technically speaking, here it says thinking that all mothers are in such a condition generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. So if we take that into account, then first we have equanimity again. We meditate, all the people are equal, right? Then remember they've been your mother or father or have taken care of you many times. Because every time we reborn, especially being born from the womb, you need a mother, right? You need parents to grow up or people to take care of you when you just come out of the womb. Then you need people to take care of you, otherwise you die, So you need people to take care of you, So, and that goes on for quite some years, So then think that all beings around you, at least once, have done that to you, right? If you have beginningless lifetimes, then you must have, if in this life we have people who took care of us, then the previous lifetime must also then people who took care of us, and different from the present one. So in that way, if you go back, then there's no reason why not. Every single sentient being, at least once, should have taken care of you, prevent you from getting harmed, prevent you from hunger, prevent you from thirst, prevent you from dying in dangerous situations. So that kind of innate, taking care we see everywhere. Humans, animals do the same thing. They take care of the newborns, right? So in that way, all sentient beings at least once have been like as a mother, or as kind of taking care, for you when you were very small. Yeah? So you think in that way, then you repay the kindness, same as we just talked about. Yeah, and then you generate this wish of love and kindness. May they always abide in happiness. Yeah? Then you generate a wish based on this kind of aspects here, being explained more about the suffering of sentient beings. Yeah? So you generate compassion. May they be free of suffering. Yeah? Then based on that, you generate special intention. I will cause them to be free of suffering. Yeah? You take responsibility. That's what we call special intention. Then after that, you check if you have the capacity to do so or not, as we just saw. And you see, I have to get more development of mind, so I have to become a Buddha in order to do that. Yeah? So then you aspire to become a Buddha in order to liberate sentient beings from the suffering. Yeah? The mind of enlightenment with those two aspirations. Yeah? So that's actually generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. Yeah? That's how to generate the mind of enlightenment. Yeah? So there's many ways. Yeah? I just explained the 7 cause and effect method. Yeah? So there's 6 causes and 1 effect. Taking away equanimity. Yeah? So then what is left is seeing all sentient beings as your mother. Yeah? Remembering the kindness, 2. Repaying the kindness, 3. Yeah? Then love and kindness. Yeah? May they always abide in happiness. Number 4. Then compassion. Yeah? May they always be free of suffering. Number 5. And a special intention. I will cause them. Take the responsibility. Yeah? That's 6 causes, right? And the effect, the 7th one, is then Bodhichitta, or the mind of enlightenment. I have to become a Buddha. Yeah? With these 2 aspirations. Aspiration to become a Buddha, as well as an aspiration to liberate sentient beings from the suffering. Yeah, so that's what's called 7 cause and effect method. Yeah, is that clear? Everybody has those points? If you didn't know them before? Yeah? Yeah, you got it? You got it? Yeah? Oh, not right. First one, seeing all sentient beings as your mother. Yeah. And on top you put equanimity. It's not listed as one of the... But equanimity first, yeah? Then seeing all sentient beings as your mother.
Okay, this is 1. And the third one?
The third one is remembering the kindness. And the 4th one is?
Loving kindness.
Repaying. First is repaying the kindness. Is in between. And then, because then the close feeling arises, right? We have to get close to beings in order to generate the supreme wish, So then, repaying their kindness, yeah? And then, after that, love and kindness. Yeah? After that? Compassion, yeah? Freedom from suffering, yeah? Same, yeah? Compassion. After that, special intention, yeah? I will take responsibility to do so, yeah? And after special intention, bodhicitta, yeah? Yeah? So that's one aspect, that's one method. Another method you can find in especially text Shantideva, it's like exchanging self for others. That's another way to generate this kind of supreme wish. That is basically focused upon seeing the faults or the drawbacks of the self-cherishing attitude. Yeah, we cherish our own self more than others, but actually that by itself causes more problems than benefits. If you only think about yourself, your own kind of happiness, very narrow-minded, there's no happiness, right? So that self-cherishing attitude, so you see the faults of the self-cherishing attitude, you see the benefits of cherishing others, that's the second one, and then you learn how to exchange the two, So that's another method, maybe another time we can explain here.